We are awaiting the sentencing for comedian Bill Cosby. A judge has already ruled today that he is a sexually violent predator. They wanted to get that out of the way before the sentencing. Bill Cosby facing up to 10 years in prison after he was convicted in April of drugging and sexually assaulting a woman at his home in 2004. His defense team has asked that he be sentenced to house arrest rather than going to prison, predominantly because of his age. Vinu Varghese, a criminal defense attorney and a former prosecutor, on set with me now. Does the old age thing work in court?
It can. It can, particularly his advanced age, his health issues. All of this could play a factor in the sentencing. All
right, I'll let you get the first question out. Let's go now to the President of the United States. We were awaiting remarks at a working lunch at the United Nations. President Trump.
United Nations, I've long said the United Nations has such tremendous potential. Everybody gathered together, all of these great leaders, world leaders, people that we all know and read about on a weekly basis, sometimes a daily basis. But the United Nations has this incredible potential to bring people together. I think we're an example, certain things we're doing now toward world peace. We're truly has a direct relationship to the time I spent at the United Nations, meeting some of you. Many of you are now friends. When I first came here, even though I lived in New York, it was a little bit of a foreign territory to me, the United Nations, but now it's like home. But so many great people, so many great leaders in this room, and a lot of terrific things are happening. We covered, as you know, during my speech, North Korea. Last year, my tone was somewhat different on North Korea than it is right now. Tremendous progress has been made, and I think you're going to see an outcome. As the expression goes, who knows? But I think you're going to see a very, very great outcome. I hope that eventually some of the other countries that we have conflict with, if not warlike conflict, trade conflict, other types of conflict, a lot of those problems will disappear, I think, by next year. I want to just thank you on behalf of myself, Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Nikki Haley. So many people have such respect for the job you're doing, Mr. Secretary General. And on behalf of the United States, I'd like to toast you, and I'd like to toast the United Nations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
At the United Nations General Assembly, you heard him reference his speech, which was pretty tough on Iran and Russia and other nations, as he pushed forth with America first. And then now he gave opening remarks before the working lunch there at the United Nations. So we'll continue to watch this as the president makes news right here in New York at the UN. Meanwhile, we're going to go to the breaking news that we're expecting now, we've been told, in the next couple of minutes. So I want to bring back criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Vinu Varghese. You and I were just talking off camera about the situation that's going to play out for Bill Cosby. And there were many women who came forth, but this one particular case, prosecutors decided to try. Why?
That was the only one that was left within the statute of limitations. They charged it basically on the last day of the statute, before the statute of limitations ran. They allowed these other women to testify as what's called prior bad act evidence, to show that he had a common scheme or plan.
When you hear his attorneys, and right before we went to the president for breaking news from him, you had said that old age can work sometimes. Do you think it works for Bill Cosby, who many people already see has lived a very privileged life? And if you're found to be a sexually violent predator, do you deserve a break in court?
I think for Bill Cosby, I'd be surprised if it does work. I think for most people it can work. You know, you have advanced age, you have somebody with a whole host of health problems, but Bill Cosby, if this judge wants to set an example, is going to slam Bill Cosby to 10 years in jail.
What do you know about Judge Stephen O'Neill in terms of what this particular judge might do?
Well, I think the fact that he allowed during the trial 5 other women to testify is a bad sign for Bill Cosby. Now, there's 2 different ways he can go about this. He could choose to show mercy, which probably anger a lot of people, or he can just put him in jail, which will make him a folk hero.
So when you hear the prosecution say that he would do it again, he's a predator, he's 81 years old. Is that a strong enough argument for the maximum amount of prison time in this case?
I don't think it's a good argument here, because assuming Bill Cosby is a sexual violent predator, I think his hunting days are long over. So here, I think it's a question of punishing him for all the other acts and all these other people that have come out.
I want people to catch the lingo that you just dropped, because you have worked sex crimes in your past as a prosecutor as well. You said hunting days are over.
Right.
Predator, when the judge made that decision, that actually informs the sentencing, I would imagine. It's then taken up to a different level. You're talking hunting. You're talking predator.
Yeah, well, that's a designation for purposes of the Sex Offender Registration Act. So there's levels 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the most restrictive, 3 being a lifetime placement on the sex offender registry list. If he's in jail, puts in 10 years in jail, it's not likely he's going to ever get out. He's going to walk out. There probably will be a death sentence for Bill Cosby.
As we look forward, you said that this particular case with this woman was filed on the last day that it could be because of the statute of limitations. Why did the judge allow other women to come in, and what effect could that have on the sentencing?
Well, the theory which the judge allowed these women to come in was called prior bad acts evidence. So they're coming in to show a common scheme or plan. So they argue that Bill Cosby had a common scheme, a plan of seducing and assaulting women. The problem is that the idea of prior bad acts is basically to show complicated financial schemes and things along those lines. On a sex case, you are really risking the fare of undue prejudice, because particularly some of these women said they used alcohol. I mean, if you're a lot of alcohol is involved in a lot of things.
Many of them, though, did say, some of the women who've come forward, not all of them made it to this courtroom, but some of them have talked to other publications, and some of them have alleged that they were drugged the same way. I mean, there seemed to be some sort of a pattern among women who wouldn't have known each other in any other category.
Right, but it also depends on what Quaaludes were used for. Back in the 70s, it was an inhibition-releasing drug.
So, you know, just to make it clear with people, what they're seeing on the left side of your screen right now is outside that courtroom in Norristown, Pennsylvania, where we expect at any moment now, we're being told that the sentencing will be coming. The verdict in this case we already know, and now this ruling on top of that verdict of sexual assault is by this judge calling Bill Cosby a sexually violent predator. So what will the sentencing be? That's what we are awaiting right now, and we've been told that that could happen at any moment. So we do have our own Fox News team inside the courtroom, and something different, Vanu, that I want to talk to you about. They expect this to take a while to read this sentencing. We've already heard the impact statements. Walk me through what happens next.
So the judge, for purposes of appellate review, what that means is at some point the appellate court is going to look at this case, assuming Bill Cosby's alive to have his appeals heard. They're going to look at this case and they're going to analyze everything he said. So he has to lay out all the factors for sentencing Bill Cosby. So he has to be very careful here, which you asked a minute ago about what impact the other women testifying could have on sentencing. He has to be careful to say that he is finding it appropriate to sentence Bill Cosby to 10 years in jail for the act of this against this woman. And then he can say, look, the other evidence that came in that was barred by statute of limitations also supports his finding that he's a sexual predator.
All right. This is the first time in the Me Too era that we have seen a celebrity go to trial. And you think it's possible, from what you said, that the judge may make an example of Bill Cosby and he gets the 10 years. We'll see what happens. Stand by, please. We are awaiting the Cosby sentencing. That's coming up. Stay close.